All right. My goodness. Grab a drink. Hopefully this won't get too crazy in the background. I've got husbands listening to loud music and children running around like absolute animals around my house, but that's what you get with little kids, so there you go. Yeah, it's fabulous. It's absolutely fabulous around here. Welcome to my cozy place. Grab a blanket, grab a hot drink. We're going to talk about my favorites for 2023 of all of the books I read. I had a pretty good 2023 reading-wise. Reading-wise, it was fantastic. I actually had a lot of 5-star reads. I think it was something like 10 or 15 books. It was definitely more than 10 books with 5 stars. I think I was kind of liberal with the 5 stars a little bit though, but it was mostly just kind of my reaction to these books. Totally subjective. I'm not saying that these are perfect books in any way. Some of them to me, yes, I will say perfect book. Absolutely 100% perfect. There is a reason why, this is so well known or it's a classic or whatnot. But it was actually really hard for me to narrow this down to 10 books for this year. So this is my top 10 of the books I read this year. I am going to do some honorable mentions really fast. I'm not going to go into too much explanation about the plot of these books. I'm just going to give you my opinion of them, talk about maybe a few key things about them that I liked, and just kind of move on with it from there. I'm going to try to keep this fairly short because frankly these all were so good to me that I will just ramble on and ramble on and ramble on and not really get anywhere. So I'm trying to keep myself as concise as possible. Let's go ahead and get into the honorable mentions really fast. So honorable mention number 1, the Bard, Shakespeare himself. What else can I say? Great. It's fantastic material. I think the tragedies are so good. I'm not a huge fan of the comedies yet, although I do like seeing them performed, so that's good. But Hamlet and Macbeth out of here, just actually reading the text itself, so wonderful, so rich, so good. Just, the man was epic. I don't know how else to say it. Just made a standard. And I really think that Shakespeare still, to this day, affects storytelling and the acts that you take the acts that you will take a story through and the plot line and all of that. I think that he mastered it, and I think that he is still one of the greatest examples of how to construct a story and how to make characters really feel alive. Do yourself a huge, huge favor. Read Shakespeare. You will get a lot out of it. There are multiple courses on YouTube. I think that it's not Oxford. Yale courses has a Shakespeare course on there, and it's very good. I've followed along with it a little bit. I need to follow along better with it, and that's going to be one of the things I try to do in 2024, I think. So, Shakespeare, there you go. The only romance that I actually read this year was Book Lovers by Emily Henry. And I really enjoyed this book. I don't think it's perfect. I don't think it's a perfect romance book, but I really savored this, really enjoyed it. And it was in a time for me where I needed something kind of simple to read, and it was fantastic to me, so I wanted to mention it for this year. The plot's pretty simple. The characters I thought were pretty good. They were not super annoying. I didn't hate them or anything like that. A lot of regular romance books, I really just don't like the characters, but this one was good to me. And I enjoyed kind of the banter back and forth. I enjoyed the romance elements themselves. It was just a really enjoyable book. So I do recommend it if you're looking for a romance book to read. It was just good. Fantasy books. These are honorable mentions for me. The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I think these are great books. They're fantastic. The entire series is really fantastic. And I really want to read the other books that are part of this world. And it's not this series, basically, but it is part of this particular world. I think Holly Black is doing something really cool with her fae in this. They're not like humans at all. They are more monstrous in their actions and what they do in these books, which I have found really cool and really different compared to other fae and other, fantasy romance type books these days. If you are looking for something a little bit different in your fairies, or you just want to read something, action adventure, there's really no spice in these books, which I thought was kind of refreshing too. So if you're looking for something fantasy romance wise that's a little bit different, go ahead and check these out. You might be pleasantly surprised by them. And I just really enjoyed the characters in these. Really good stuff from Holly Black. Another honorable mention fantasy romance is The Hurricane Wars by Thea Guazong. This is more of a right place at the right time kind of a book for me. I had just gotten over oral surgery for my wisdom teeth. I'd have them removed. I wanted something to read while I was slightly delirious, probably from the pain medication, and I had to sit around for like 2 days anyway. I couldn't do anything. They told me for a couple of days. And so I said, well, I'm going to get a book just because I have to sit around. This was a great book to pick. It was really fun. It is fantasy. There are airships in it, which I think is so cool. It's a Raylo kind of romance, and it was just really fun. And I'm glad I read it, and I suggest anybody else go ahead and pick it up if you are into fantasy romances and you just want something that's just plain fun to read. So definitely enjoyed that a lot. Then I mentioned in my previous video, I had put Never Let Me Go on my worst for 2023, not because it's a bad book, because it just affected me so much. And I got so sad and so kind of traumatized by that book. I needed something that I knew was going to get me out of that sufferfest. So I went ahead and read Frances Hodgson Burnett's The Secret Garden. I had read this a very long time ago as a kid. I liked it then, and I felt like I could read this again and get that warm, fuzzy feeling that I remembered having as a child again. Maybe, just, do I remember this correctly? Was it as good as I remember it being? And it was absolutely fantastic. Maybe not stellar, really. It's a fantastic story. It is a little dated in some ways because of when it was written and, views and opinions of that time, that kind of thing. But still a really good story. Really enjoyed it. It's just the atmosphere of this home that they're in, this English manor in the countryside, is very, very cozy. Just a warm, wonderful, happy book in the end. So many good things happen in it that I think it's definitely worth reading to kids. I think it's worth reading now if you're looking for something that's kind of a pick-me-up. So definitely read The Secret Garden. It's very good. All right, now we'll get to my absolute top 10 for this year of the books that I thought were just fantastic. Again, these are my opinions. You may or may not like these books. You may find, faults with these books, writing, the plot not being very good, the characters being horrible, all of that kind of thing. But to me, these were very good and for various reasons. So, number 10, is Perfume, the Story of a Murderer. This book was a surprise to me. I had seen it kind of around on a few lists of, good books to read, just different books, different kinds of books. And this is a bit of a crazy romp. This orphan child is given to a priest. He was passed over to monks, and the monks were giving him to nursemaids to nurse the child. The problem was the nurses were kind of freaked out by this kid because he had no smell. Like, he did not have a smell, like bodily smell at all. And they basically gave the child back to the monk and said, there's something wrong with this kid. He has no odor, no smell whatsoever. And so then he ends up being raised by the monks, and he grows up, but he has a really good sense of smell himself. And so he's always, searching, wandering around, smelling everything. So this is a very sensuous book in a way. Everything is described in olfactory, I should say. It's kind of weird. But, it's done in a way that's really good and really well done. It's not annoying. There are books that will talk about the scent of lilacs permeated the air, or so-and-so always smelled of roses and sandalwood and all of that stuff. That doesn't exist here. It's done in a much better style. I can't really describe it. It's very sensual. It's very cool. And then, it is this main character who has grown up, and he is trying to find the ultimate perfume, I suppose, is what he's after, is his goal eventually. He ends up finding a girl who is perfect to him. It is the perfect fragrance of this human being, I suppose. And I'm not going to spoil this in any way. He does some things happen, and he does become a murderer in the book. But it's not grotesque in any way. I remember there are some bits of it where I was like, ugh, really? But it's so interesting. You're just in his head, and it's psychological, it's sensual. It's just the touch, the taste, the feel, the smells of things. Everything is described so beautifully in this book. I really enjoyed it. So that was I'm trying not to go too overboard in these descriptions, but that's Perfume. If this interests you at all, it's a fun ride. It's a really fun ride, and I just loved it. I thought it was cool. I thought it was weird. I thought it was cool. So if you're looking for something weird, you might pick this up. It's really kind of neat. So number 9 was Dragonwyck by Anya Seton. Wow. This was a very unexpected book for me. It was just beautifully written. The story had all kinds of twists and turns in it. It was just fun. It was just a really outstanding Gothic novel. I enjoyed it so much. The description, nature in it, the beauty of the actual estate itself described in the book was just fascinating. And I enjoyed the plot. The story was great. I think that if you're really into Gothic novels, you should really pick this one up. I've discovered that this year I really enjoy a good Gothic novel, so I'm glad I picked this one up. Number 8 is Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas. This is part of the Throne of Glass series, and I feel like that this is the best book that Sarah J. Maas has put out. There's so much going on in this, and how she balances everything going on is just crazy to me. There's so many characters. There is so many plot points that are being wrapped up in this. There's just so much going on in it. And there's a romance factor that just heats up even more in this. Just so good. If you're into the Throne of Glass series, if you're into Sarah J. Maas and you haven't read the Throne of Glass series, you should definitely pick this up. Pick up the entire Throne of Glass series. Remember, it was like her first series to come out, so the first couple of books are not really up to, I guess, the par of the Court of Thorns and Roses book series, but it's still really good. It's still fantastic. I had actually listened to the first 3 books in this series years ago, I think when they first came out, and they didn't really grab me too much, and I wasn't as interested in it. But after reading a Court of Thorns and Roses and all of the books in that series, I decided to go back to the Throne of Glass books and to reread what I had read before and then complete it, and I am so glad I did. Empire of Storms, I think, is the best book in that entire series. Just fabulous. Just a fabulous book. Emotionally, at the end, it just gets you. There's such a great cliffhanger, and there's just so many things going on in it. It's just fantastic. So that was my number 8, and I'm really, really glad I read it. All right, my number 7 book is A Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. This one I did not expect to be as great as it was. It really blew me away. A Sorcery of Thorns was filled with magic, wizards, wizardry, demons, magical libraries. I mean, a magical library, books that are enchanted and have their own personalities. Curses are actually in these books as well. They can become monsters. It's really quite good. It was such a fun ride, really interesting book. I've never read a fantasy quite like it before. I liked the banter of the characters, and it was just kind of a cozy, generally good time, and I just loved it. It was the right place at the right time kind of book again. It's probably, like I said at the outset of this, not like the very best book in the entire world, but for me, it really struck me this year, and I really enjoyed every minute of reading it. So if you're into fantasy, you might go ahead and give this a try. There is some romance in it. It's very, very slow burn, and there's no spice in it whatsoever. It's really kind of a YA sort of a book. The demon Silas in this book is one of the best characters I have ever read. I just enjoyed him so much. He's really cool. The other characters are also very good. The main character is a girl named Elizabeth Scribner, who is an apprentice librarian, and she meets a gentleman called Nathaniel Thorne, who is a wizard, and his house is named Thorne, so his last name is Thorne. So, but yeah, it's a fun book. If you like Howl's Moving Castle, you'll love this book. It's very Howl's Moving Castle-esque, but there's a lot more action in it, and Elizabeth is a fighter kind of a character. Yeah, she does fight with a rapier, and she sometimes wears armor, if I remember correctly. But she's pretty tough as nails kind of a girl. But she and Nathaniel have a little thing going on throughout the whole book, and it's a pretty slow burn, but super fun, lots of fun to read, and I just really liked it. Number 6 is The Blue Castle by L.M. Montgomery. Here at the end of the year, I really got into L.M. Montgomery, and I never really read them before. I just started with The Blue Castle, and then I just kept going from there, which was great. The Blue Castle is very cozy. The Blue Castle is just wholesome in so many ways. The main character is just absolutely fabulous. You'll hate her family members. Oh my goodness, you will absolutely despise her family members and how they treat the main character. It's worse than Harry Potter was treated, I swear. The main character's name is Valency. I've never heard of a name like that before, and it's fantastic. It's somebody with a weird name like myself. You know, it's always nice when you hear a name that you don't really hear very often. You're like, oh, I can commiserate with you, you know. It's really weird. It's just one of those things, like, you know, when you have a strange name that nobody can pronounce, like, on the first try. There's a kinship there. But anyway, Valency goes through so much, and her relatives are so annoying, and you will hate them so much. But one day she just decides, to heck with them all. I'm going to do what I want, and I'm going to make my own life. And that's just going to be how it is. And so she does that. She totally does it. And she comes from this family who consider themselves way above everybody else in their station. They have money. They have a relative that's fairly well off and all of that. And she starts living her life the way she wants to. And then things kind of proceed from there. And, you know, she makes her life better by the things that she does. And so I really enjoyed it. It was really cozy, really beautiful. There is a romance in it. The romance is just beautifully done. You know, there's more than just skin deep. There's more to a person than just what's on the outside. You know, romance is more than skin deep. Beauty is more than skin deep, that sort of thing. So, absolutely wonderful book. So I'd say if you're looking for anything cozy to kind of cuddle up with this winter, definitely The Blue Castle. It's a fantastic book. Please read The Blue Castle. Now, number 5, weird book, psychologically crazy book, Bunny by Mona Awad. Bunny is about a scholarship student that goes to a really prestigious university to do creative writing. And I think it's a graduate program. Well, she meets these girls who are very Lolita-esque. They like to dress up. They like to be pretty. They like pretty girly things. And our main character is not girly pretty, that kind of thing at all. But she finds that she is just drawn to these other girls, this little clique of girls, and ends up getting involved with them. Well, then everything goes off the rails from there, man. There's a lot of drinking. There's a lot of drug use. The drugs are never really fully explained in it. There's some kind of psychoactive drug use going on in here. I can't really tell you what it was because I don't think it was really fully explained. But this clique of girls, they're very twee. I love that term, twee. They refer to each other as Bunny all the time. And the weird thing is when they're talking to each other and they're saying, oh, Bunny, you're so funny. Oh, Bunny, blah, blah, blah. Reading it makes sense. I don't know. It's just bizarre. It was so weird. And just, like I said, it goes off the rails so quickly. You don't even know what's going on half the time. So our main character girl ends up getting involved with these people, and her whole life ends up getting pushed aside. And then her old friends kind of come back and are like, oh, we found you. Oh, what have you been doing? We found you. We need to help you, get away from these girls. And there's a lot of craziness going on. There's ritualistic things going on. Just bizarre, absolutely bizarre ritualistic stuff going on. It was insane, and I could not put it down. I thought it was just great. So if you're looking for a book that is just crazy town USA, I mean insanity USA, definitely pick it up. I thought it was so much fun and quirky and just weird and just crazy. Just absolutely crazy. But I enjoyed the heck out of it. So that was Bunny. That was Bunny by Mona Awad, and I just thought it was so much goddamn fun. Number 4 was Ernest Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea. Oh my gosh, The Old Man and the Sea. So sad, so captivating. Just man's struggle against nature, man's struggle against the world, just man's struggle. That is what The Old Man and the Sea is. But it tells a really good story. It tells you why it's important to keep struggling no matter what. Some of the relationships in The Old Man and the Sea are so beautiful. It makes you want to cry. It's so good. If you haven't read The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway, it's short, for one thing. There's an absolutely fantastic audiobook version of it on YouTube by Charlton Heston. So good. I will go ahead and link that down in the description below. Absolutely excellent. It will take you a couple hours to get through, because it is a short story. It's very, very good, though. Made me bawl my eyes out probably for a couple of hours. It's just so affecting. It's so beautiful. It's so moving. It's so good. And Ernest Hemingway just really has a way of telling a story. Short, sweet, and to the point oftentimes. It's just beautiful. I don't know how else to say it. And anyway, that was The Old Man and the Sea. My number 3 book was My Antonia. This book, for being as short as it is such a sweeping epic. Takes place in Nebraska, north of Missouri. And it's so good. I don't know how else to explain it. It's just so good. The writing is beautiful. Willa Cather's writing is fantastic. The descriptions of the fields, the descriptions of the different seasons of the year in Nebraska and how beautiful they are. It's very, very good. It just captures the spirit of that place so well. Reading this made me look at the natural world around me in a different way than I ever really would have. And it actually makes me appreciate where I live. A lot of times, I personally will feel like that this is the most boring place in the world to live. The Midwest, so dull, so boring. Not much is going on here all the time. We don't have a lot of culture out here. We don't have a lot of the things that the East Coast and the West Coast have. But we have nature, and we have seasons. And really, this has made me appreciate those so much more than I ever have before. The story is about, a boy growing up with his friends here, and mostly about a girl that he grows up with, and I think he is in love with her throughout the book. They never, marry, any of that, but he grows up with her, and she's like the most captivating person that he's ever met in here, and it's their whole lives, and it's beautifully told. So I think that if you're interested in books about Middle America, the Midwest, especially like early 19th century is when this takes place, definitely read this one. I'd actually recommend also Oh Pioneers is quite good too, but I haven't finished it yet. I've just been lazy and haven't finished it. I'd also recommend Laura Ingalls Wilder if this is the sort of subject matter you're interested in. I don't know very many other books about the Midwest right now, but I think I want to do some research and maybe try and find more books like this one. But yeah, any other books by Willa Cather I would definitely be interested in reading in the future. My number 2 book I absolutely adore and love, and this is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This is a Gothic novel set in the 1920s or 30s, I think. she's nameless, actually. I always forget that. Our main character is totally nameless in this. She is not a maid, a companion. She's a companion to another woman at the beginning of this book, and ends up meeting this wealthy gentleman whose wife has died, and she ends up becoming the next wife. And his name is Max de Winter. I remember that. And I can't remember. I had a dream. I dreamt of Manderley again. That's right. She ends up becoming the second wife and the second mistress of Manderley, which is the estate that Mr. de Winter owns. And Max de Winter, at the beginning, he is a very charismatic gentleman. He seems to be genuinely interested in the main character as, a new wife. He seems kind of lonely in a way. And the romance is a little quick, and it's still really, really good. It's really sweet. But then when they move back to Manderley, Rebecca's ghost, not an actual ghost, but her spirit itself is still all over this property. And nobody really changes anything. Everything's kind of remains the same. The staff are really weird toward the new Miss de Winter. And it's just a little psychologically crazy. The whole book is kind of a little psychologically weird. Really gothic, really fun. The only thing with this book was when I got to the end of the book, I couldn't believe it was the end. I was like, no, I can't. No, this cannot be the end. I want more of this. But that was the only thing that disappointed me about it. But it really wasn't a disappointment, too. It just was. So, but I want to read this again sometime really soon. And it's just really good. Oh, so good. Read Rebecca. Please read Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. My number one for this year, and I enjoyed the heck out of it. I actually didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did, which is the crazy thing. But that is Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. Anne of Green Gables is a perfect book. I think it's an absolutely perfect 100% all the way perfect book. Anne of Green Gables is a Bildungsroman. You probably already know most of the plot of Anne of Green Gables. Anne Shirley comes to Green Gables to live with Marilla Cuthbert and Matthew Cuthbert, when really what the two of them wanted was a boy instead of a girl to help out on the farm. And so after a bit of time and after thinking about it and living with Anne for a little bit, they decide, especially after hearing Anne's story from her mouth, they decide, oh, we're going to keep this little girl and we're going to raise her ourselves. So then it's just Anne Shirley's adventures there in Green Gables and the people she meets, the things that she learns, her life, the silly misadventures she gets into, the trouble she ends up getting into, all of these things. And it's just a sweet, perfect book. Just all the characters are likable. All the characters are lovely. It's just the coziest book. The seasons, everything is so romanticized, too, in this book. When I attempted to read this a very long time ago, when I was a child, I could not really get into it because I just don't think I was very interested in the subject matter at that time. But when I picked it up this time and read it, it's poetic. It's so romantic. I couldn't believe the language in it. Just L.M. Montgomery in this particular book, it's just an outstanding piece of art. It really is. And even though the story is just about a sweet little girl and her growing up, it's a perfect book. I mean, it's chef's kiss. It's beautiful. It really is. It is perfect. And I'm telling you, I'm going to read every single one of these Anne of Green Gables books, because there's actually like 8 books that feature, I think it might be 6 actually, 6 books that feature Anne Shirley. And then there are like 2 others that feature a couple of other characters. And maybe Marilla, I think, is one of the characters in a book. It might just focus on her early life, which would be really fascinating, actually. So I'm going to end up getting all of these books in physical format and probably going through and annotating the crap out of just Anne of Green Gables and who knows what other ones. I've also listened to Anne of the Island. That one's been really good too. It's not as, there's something about it that's not as good as Anne of Green Gables. Anne of Green Gables was just so compelling. I think it was because it was you following a little girl growing up, where Anne in the next books has grown up to an extent, still growing up, and still learning things, but you kind of follow her life into her adulthood, basically, from there. So I'm just really enjoying those. I plan on reading that entire series in 2024 and just enjoying it. So anyway, those were my top 10 books for the year. I hope that you all have enjoyed this video. I should be back pretty soon. I'm going to do a video about the future of this channel. I'm not going anywhere, so don't worry about that if that's what you're concerned. But mostly like my booktube resolutions for 2024, and kind of planning a little bit of an idea of where I want to go with this channel next year. Because things got a little chaotic, a little crazy, and I ended up doing, meandering around quite a bit, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that, but I think that I want to try and get back to the core of what I started out doing with this channel, and maybe planning things out just a little bit more, but we'll talk about that in the next video. So I hope that you have enjoyed again. I hope that you have had a wonderful, wonderful 2023. Happy New Year. If this comes out before New Year, please have a Happy New Year. And I hope to see you all in the next video. Thanks again. Bye.